Well, this is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kol El, and I'm going to look at the Zohar for today. Today is the fifth day of the week of Parshas Vayachi. We're on page Tav Pei Beis. I'm going to get right into the Zohar. It's beautiful, beautiful piece. Tana Elef v'chamesh me'er reichim salchu b'kol yom b'Gan Eden. Matok, he said, Lamadna, we learn like this. She'elef v'chamesh me'os 1,500 reichos, fragrances. Only b'kol yom b'Gan Eden. Enter in, go up from Gan Eden. Misbas me b'chu inin devushin dikar tahahu alma. What do these reichos do? Shemisbasmim, they perfume behem osam levushi hakava, those garments of glory shall olam ha'elyon that come out of Atzilos, the upper worlds. Hamachandachim, the tzaddikim, the asadavod, and these worlds which were prepared for the tzaddikim in the world to come. Now let me see, just change this slightly. Okay. He's the misadran min yomoy de barnash. Shehim misatrim, what are we actually talking about? They're crowned on a person, these garments. V'nisaktim min yomim shal yomo shal adam, and they're all put together into these garments as a result of what the man did with the days of his life. So he said the Matok brings over here the inyan elef v'chamesh meos reichos. So how do we get to this number 1,500 fragrances from Gan Eden? Chiyesh he chasadim b'das. That's 5. Das has 5 chasadim. Umishon mispashtem ha'chei chasadim b'chagat Noah. So from there, the chasadim in the das spread, the 5 of them spread into a different location in the Chesed Gevurah Tiferes Netzach and Hod of Zeranpin, and they build them. V'achar kach ha'chei chasadim nechlalim b'yisod, and then after that, the 5 chasadim wind up going into the Yisod, the Zer Anpin. So if you take the 3 stages, you have 3 sets of 5, that's 1,500. I read 2 bechinos, a chasadim. So we see the chasadim are found in 3 different places, doing 3 different acts. He said, and then he says you take that, and you multiply 10 by 10. In other words, there's 1 inside the next, add 2 males until you get to 1,500. Because in these 3 bechinas that we're talking about, we're going to clothe the garments of the Naran, which is Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, which we're going to explain as we go on. The Hainu, the 1,500 reichos, these 1,500 fragrances, the called the Vush, goes to each. The Vush. Now, give me 1 second. So let me bring us back to some drawings or some depictions of words. They're actually combinations. This one, which is called Naranchi, and this one is called Kol Soma. So in Kol Soma, the last word, you can see they're Kalim, Levushim, Slomim, Mochim, and Osios. These are garments for the light garments. Naranchi is different levels of the light itself. And the main part of the light that we deal with, and again, you read them, and there's Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida, they're going from the right to left, from the top to the bottom. You could also read them the other way. The first 3, then they're called the Naran, represents elements of spiritual light that are inside of us. So that's the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. The Chai, Yechida, or Makifin, they're far away, much more powerful lights. Now, this is the light that goes into the ultimate receptacle for the light. And we're going to talk about that. This is the light and its clothing going in to Zeranpin. We'll talk about that a little bit now. So let's look a little bit more and see what else the Zohar has to say. He says, Amar Rebbe Yehuda says like this, He says, "Midineket kra reich begada b'loshen rabim." The fact is that the pasuk said he smelled the fragrance of his garments in plural. Mashma sheyesh harbe levushim. It's mashma that there are a lot of clothing. Im kain kama levushim enu. That's case. How many garments are they? And he said, kama levusha yakar. How many garments of glory na'asim la'adam. That it made for the man during the sparks of his life. In other words, we create things as we go along. So he says, Rebbe Loza says, Tori de Alma al do Poligo. It means the mountains of the world are arguing about that, and the Matok translates Olam, the Olam, the world itself. Shehena Tanoim, which are the rabbis that call the Tanoim, Holkim al Bazeh. They argue about this. But there are in fact three. There are actually how many garments there are? There's actually three. Levushim, levush echad l'kol echad machanaran. There is one garment for each one of these lights that are going to come into their anpin, ultimately into us. And here are the lights again. There are 5 of them. 3 of them, that's the first 3, reading from right to left, called the Naran, come in. Now they're actually graded, so the Neshama is the most panimistic part, and then the Ruach is less panimi, and then the Nefesh is actually the receptacle of those lights. And that's what we're going to hear now. So let's look on a little bit more. Let me see if I can find where I stopped. So Valtalasa Inan, there are 3, so I'm going to start here. There are 3. My opinion is that there are 3 shehem shlosha levush echad, the call echad mandaram. So each one of these lights has a garment. And the farish chad de mislav shecha behakol levusha rucha de begins to the eden de ara. So he says, what's one of the levushim? Levush echad shemislachesh bo haruach shebegan eden ara. So here now we have the word ruach. So he says there's one garment that covers over the Ruach that's in Gan Eden of the land, which is the Gan Eden he's going to explain of Omalansia. Ki Mishkan Ruach of where is the dwelling place of the Ruach? Ruach means so many different things, but it all has to do with air. Hu began Eden atachton sheba olam b'chasiya. This is in the lower Gan Eden in our world. The v'chavachad yikaro mekula. Then there's one, there is the most glorious one of them, the most glorious of all of them, that is clothed in that garment. And its dwelling place is in a place called the bindings of light. That place, I don't have a definition for it, but Tzrur HaChaim. The Gan Eden, which is in the Gan Eden Elyon. Where is that? Shetachas Kisei HaKavod, which is underneath the throne in which the Malchus of Atzilus rests. Bein Purpira the Malchus. So this word Purpira is kind of an unusual word. He says, Bein Levush Malchus, amongst the garments. He says Purpira means the garments of the king. Behind the Bein Levushi HaChashmal. So he says, what's the chashmal? He says, it comes to the garments of chashmal. Chashmal is a garment, the most outside garment that covers over the light of chashmal. A malvish ala malchus, which covers over malchus. Shehu nikras purpira the malcha, which is called the clothing of the king. Shehu sod hamachitzos, which is the secret of the machitza, of the boundary, that is the division, or usually says the filter. Hamapsekes bein olam atzilus, that divides olam atzilus, the bein olam abriya and olam abriya. Nimsa shahan neshama hu bebriya. So it comes out like this: neshama, the nature of neshama pairs with briya. Shasham Gan Eden Elyon. Why? Because that is where the upper Gan Eden is located. Shehu tachas kisei hakavod, which is underneath the kisei hakavod, as we said. Shehu HaMalchus, the Atzilus, once again, which is the Malchus of Atzilus. Going on, he said, V'chad levusha de levar. The levush echad chitzon, so the most outside garment. Shabolam hazeh nefesh is for the nefesh. She'omedes bechutz the Gan Eden, which is actually outside of Gan Eden. The kohen v'lo kohen. Shalafamim nimsas hanefesh b'leveshes bo v'lepamim lo. So sometimes we see that the nefesh is clothed within this, and sometimes not. Now, what does he mean by that? V'hainu is chaze v'lo is chaze. You see it, you don't see it. Let's talk about the nefesh now. Lepamim hu nira, lepamim enu nira. Sometimes it's not. Because of the bush, we're talking about this chashmal now, which is the most outer level levush. He says it comes sometimes the levush who ruchni kitzas. Excuse me, he doesn't say sometimes. He halavush hazel who ruchni kitzas, begashmi kitzas, because the chashmal has some physicality to it, but it's mostly not. The chen lepamim enu nira, so therefore sometimes it's not seen because when it's in the ruchni side. So the concept of the light, which is called nefesh. So then in this garment that we're talking about, this chashmal, this is where the nefesh is clothed. And it goes and it flies through the world. And all of the beginnings, of every moon, new moon, v'shabza, and every Shabbos. Oslos v'is barucha, that begins at the Eid in the Ara. It goes out, the B'kol Rosh Chodesh, v'Shabbos cholechas ha'nefesh ha'miskasheres b'haruach shebegan Eid. This nefesh goes out, ties itself to a higher level. That level is a level of ruach. Now remember, we're talking about Naran. One is inside than the next. Nefesh is outside of ruach, and ruach is outside of neshama. So he says also v'skasher baruch. So now it's tied to the begins of the Eid in the Ara in this low place. The B'chol Rosh, and in other words, the lower Gan Eden, which also is, the Lashon Bina of this world. B'chol Rosh Chodesh v'Shabbos cholechas hanefesh v'skasheres b'hakul shebegan Eden ha'aretz. So there's a kesher that takes place on Rosh Chodesh with the nefesh, and Shabbos with the nefesh, and the ruach. The kaim b'bein paraguda the yakira. Ha'omad bein b'chitza sakavo, that we're now in the different boundaries of glory. Where is this we're talking about? Underneath this pargo, the pargo is lashon curtain. What's a curtain? I think that's what he wants to say. That is where the Gan Eden Haaretz is located. The Bein Olam Ha'Chasiyah K'noida Shemishkan Haruach Hu B'Gan Eden Shebechasiyah, because where is the place that Ruach wants to dwell? It wants to dwell in the Gan Eden of Asiyah. In other words, Yitzira is Panimi to Asiyah. This is the same concept as Zohar Vayachi. It says that Zer Anpin is Panimi to Malchus. That's the same concept. The May Olif V'yada Ma V'yada V'shad V'oda Chabedach Ba'alma. From this position, Memenu Lo Medis V'yodas HaNefesh Masha Yodas Modas also Hayedia Ba'olam B'cholom or B'chakit. Could be Kafi Ha'adam Ukafi Tzorach Hashah. Let me go back and say this again. He says, I'm going to start from this place. He says, Uminei. Uminei Olaf V'yada. From this now we learn like this. Ma V'yada, but we learn what we learn. V'shad V'oda Le Ba'alma. It goes out. Lomedes V'yodas HaNefesh. So the Nefesh learns from all of this flow that's coming into it. Masha Yadas, and then other what that it has to know, and then what it gets from this das, which is flowing into it. He makes it known. Hayedia ba'olam b'cholom. He makes in other words, it could come into a person through a holom, or b'chakitz, or when the person is awake. Kafi ha'adam. Everything depends on how it comes in and where it's going. Kafi tzorach hashah, or the moment that we're talking about. So we're going to stop right here, and we'll see this again, God willing, tomorrow. All the best.